So we have here tonight, don't forget, Mother's Day is coming up Sunday, and there's no evening service. There's no evening services on Sunday until we get to September. The second Sunday of September, we'll have our evening services again. And there is on Thursday, July 4th, there's going to be a church cookout picnic thing here at the church.
You want to do it here?
Yep. It's going to be here. And we've got games and songs and all that kind of stuff, and we'll have a good time here. Starts at 5, and it'll go until everybody gets tired and wants to go home. Okay?
What grill are you bringing?
Pardon?
What grill are you
It's all taken care of. We're taking care of everything. Okay? So, that's that. And there are some birthdays and stuff this month, and there's a cookout on July 4th. All right? So now, Psalm 63, and if you'd like a handout, feel free to get one. Raise your hand. John will grab it for you if you want one. Psalm 63, because there's a couple things we'll probably talk about that aren't on the handout. You might want to write it down. Okay. So, David is in the wilderness of Judah. And we'll find in 1 Samuel chapter 22 where it talks about him being in the wilderness of Judah at this particular time. So we know that's where he was at that time. All right? So, that just helps you get into that context. So, we start in verse 1. It's a very interesting statement. David says, O God, thou art my God. Early will I seek thee. My soul thirsteth for thee, as my flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there's no water. And I think it's an interesting statement here. David says, O God, you are my God. And if you look at some commentaries, they'll do a decent thing. David is just proclaiming his allegiance to God. And that is true, but there's more to it than that. Now, if you will, put yourself in a time frame of the Jews of the Old Testament era. And they live in a land where all around them there are pagans. And the pagans are worshiping false gods, idols, and so forth. And so David is saying, these false idols, that's not it. Now, the false gods, the idols, are referred to in the Old Testament. And when they're referred to in the Old Testament, the word that's used to refer to them is Elohim. The same word used to refer to God. So David is saying, all these other Elohim aren't my Elohim, you are my Elohim. So David is putting a distinction between who he believes in and the rest. And it's a very interesting study to understand. I mentioned this the other day. I'll use this little pen here as my visual aid. This is Dagon, the god Dagon. And so we go to the temple, and there's a big stone pen there. Are you worshiping the rock? No. People are not so stupid. We get this idea, these dumb pagans. They're worshiping that rock. They're worshiping that statue. No, they're worshiping what it represents. And what it represents is effective to some degree in their daily lives, or they believe at least it is. And if you go into the Bible and you study it, you'll find out that there are supernatural powers around the earth. And people will worship that supernatural being. And they will carve an image of it and say, well, there it is. And so I go to the carved pen, I go to the carved stone, the carved calf, and I'm worshiping the God or the power, the Elohim, that statue represents. And David comes into the scene here, and he says, all these other Elohim, these powerful beings, I don't worship them. God, you're the one I worship. When David is running for his life, and he has to go away from Israel, and he asked Samuel the prophet, he says, can I serve God over there? He's very serious. How do I serve God when I'm living in a land that is under the power of, under the authority, shall we say, of Dagon? Can I do that? Can. Naaman the leper says to the prophet, can I take some bags of dirt with me back home? Because there's something about this dirt. This is God's dirt. This is Elohim's dirt. Not just a Elohim, it is Jehovah's dirt. And so when I go home to my place in Damascus, and my king takes me, as I'm his escort, takes me to the temple of Vanaman, can I go home and stand on God's dirt? And he's the one I'm worshiping. The other was just, I got to do that because it's my job. Very important, very good study there. So David's saying, Elohim, you're my Elohim. You're specifically mine. And because that was his idea, his concept, his testimony, he said, it only makes sense that when I get up in the morning, I'm going to seek you. I'm going to seek what you want all the time. Now look at me and please understand this. This psalm is short, but it brings up an interesting point here. How many have ever heard that we, as Christians, we ought to be a holy people? We ought to live a holy life. What does that mean? We usually think of it in one of two concepts that overlap. Either I have to be perfect, now I'm holy because I'm perfect, or we think of it in a moral issue. I have to be morally pure. Now look at me. Understand this. Holiness has nothing to do with you working for it and getting it because of what you do. Okay, we understand I can't earn salvation. Can you live a holy life? Yeah. How do I live a holy life? Well, I don't sin. Nothing to do with it. Now, if you're living a holy life, will you be imbued in sin up to your eyebrows? No, but don't put the cart before the horse. I'm not holy because I'm not robbing a bank. The Ten Commandments, what's the first commandment? What is it? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Holiness is the motivation of, the focus of, the mindset of, God is the only one. He's first. I will have no other God before Him. Then I'm holy. Might I sin? Yeah, I might. Will it affect my holiness? Not necessarily. Will it affect my fellowship? Most likely. But what's my goal? What's my focus? What's my motivation? Paul says, I'm striving for the mastery, but I'm the chiefest of sinners. Can't do much right, but my goal is I want to do what's right. David was after God's heart. He was an adulterer. He was a murderer. What did God promise David? In the kingdom you'll be sitting on the throne because I see your heart. Now here's one illustration. This will help you. We're going to go to the temple or the tabernacle. Take your pick, temple or tabernacle, okay? And you pull out this thing that we're using in the temple, and it's a spoon. Look it up. It's a spoon. And it's holy unto... How can a spoon be holy? I don't go home and stir my chili with it. It is dedicated for, its purpose is to be used in the temple for this specific reason. Now don't defile that. Don't go home and stir your spaghetti with it. It's holy unto the Lord. Now get that concept. If a spoon can be holy, it's an inanimate object. Can I be holy? Is the spoon holy or not holy because of the sin it does or doesn't commit? What makes the spoon holy? Its purpose, its dedication, its use is for the work of God. So I'm in there and I'm the priest and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do with the spoon, but I drop it and it lands on the ground. Is it now unholy? Might it need to be washed? It's still holy. I've never defiled its purpose.
It doesn't practice spooning.
Pardon?
It doesn't practice spooning.
Yes, it's not spooning. It's not, okay? But please, I don't know if I can explain that well enough, but holiness is not something that we do. And we often think, well, I'm holy, I'm pure because I'm doing this and not that. God says, don't take my name in vain. Don't carry it like it means nothing. Don't have any other God before me. Paul, in the New Testament, says, think on these things. Get your mind focused. Okay? I don't know if I can explain that any better. I hope I'm not blurring it all over everywhere. My mind is going to Romans, and I'm trying to remember what it is. Anyway, let's get on with the psalm. Okay? God, you're my God. Okay? So David declares God is his God. In a day that pagans thought there were many other gods, every nation had their own God. And again, it's not their own piece of stone, the way they're worshiping an entity that is not Jehovah. Okay? David pushed all those ideas aside and said, no, I only serve him. We see in the Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, I want you to go back here. Down here where no water is, the water is the word mayim, M-A-Y-I-M. You see that there at the bottom? So now we're going to go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. God created the shamayim, the heavens, the shamayim. And what did he call it? Water. So just a little word study there. The heavenly water. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. What were the heavens? Big ball of water somehow. I can't explain it all, but if you got time, you want to go through it, I'll go into it in depth. But he created the water, and out of the water he created the firm stuff, the arets, that was the earth. Anyway, moving on. Verse 2. He said, I am longing for you early so that I can see thy power and thy glory, so as I have seen it, just like I've seen it in the sanctuary. I want to be able to go out and see you everywhere, just like I have a relationship with you when I go to church. When I go into the temple, when I go into the sanctuary, and we're in the house of God, and we're all there praising you, I want that to be everywhere I am. Okay? And you see, I've got all the words all listed out for you. You can look those up. Now look at me. This is very important. I hope sometime, somewhere along the line, this hits everybody upside the head and they remember it. Word studies are very important. The way we read things in 2019 English does not give us the right frame of mind often. Now, you're not going to miss a whole lot out of the Bible. You're going to get God's there to save us. We're sinners. We need to accept him. We're going to get all of that. Okay? But will we miss some context? Here, I'll give you a little instance. In the Old Testament, I challenge you, go through it the next couple of months and find every time you can where the Old Testament talks about the Messiah will come and he will die and rise again and ascend back to heaven. Find that in the Old Testament. And if you find one, please come show it to me. So when the disciples were told by Jesus, Jesus said, I will go and I will die. Now, who did the disciples think Jesus was? They thought he was the Messiah. And he said, I'm going to go to Jerusalem, I'm going to be crucified, I'm going to die, I'm going to rise again. And they didn't understand. Because in the Old Testament, it doesn't talk about that. Now, can you find inferences of that in the Old Testament? Yeah. Can you find it just come right out and says it? Nope. Bear with me here, and I'll get on with the psalm in a second. I get to be God in this illustration, and you get to be Satan, Lucifer, more specifically. I've got a plan. I know what I'm going to do. You're my enemy. So I'm just going to go up here in black and white, post all of my battle plans so you can read them. Am I going to do that? No. And the Bible even says God spoke to them in a simile and in metaphor and an analogy. God outlines the Bible little by little by little. And in the Bible it says, to whom much is given, much is required. To whom little is given, not as much is required. The Bible even talks about things. God winks at that a little bit. He knows you don't understand because he hasn't told you yet. The Bible then says in the Gospels, had they known who Jesus was, they wouldn't have crucified him. And after the resurrection, you find Jesus on the Emmaus Road saying, let me start with Moses and tell you about me. And he opens their mind, their hearts. Paul gets saved. He takes Paul out to Mount Sinai and for 3 years tells him what's going on. The Bible then says in the last days, we will know and understand even more. Not new, not different, not at odds with, but we'll understand better. So word studies are exceedingly important to understand the context of what it is. Okay? All right. So I've got all those words for you. Verse 3. Why am I seeking you early? Because your loving kindness is better for me than life. And because that's true, my lips shall praise thee. I'm going to praise you all day long because you're what I need. Okay? Verse 4. That being true, thus I will bless thee while I live. I will lift up my hands in thy name. We're going to get to something that John mentioned last couple Sundays in Sunday school in a second here, and I'll give you my twist on it. Okay? While I live. Isaiah and Psalm, we'll see this other places too, but in Isaiah 38, Psalm 15, basically says, can the grave praise you? Can the dead praise you? My understanding of this is, and I think if we want to take the time, we'll go through it some other day probably, not tonight. When I'm dead, will I live again? Yes. But while I am dead, can I walk around the earth praising God and helping other people praise God? No, I'm dead. My connection with the earth is gone. But when I physically die, am I really still alive? Spiritually, yes. Okay? So can I praise God from the grave? In the spiritual sense, but he's talking about, the context is, when I die, who's going to write a psalm for the people to sing? So it can't be done then. So he's speaking in an earthly context. When I die, I can't preach anymore. Okay? So that's that. Verse 5. My soul shall be satisfied with marrow and with fatness, and my mouth shall praise thee with joyful lips. And you go through, there's the words, what they mean and so forth. But the word praise, the halal, is also translated glory in the same psalm. So the same Hebrew word is praise in one place and glory in another. But you see here, David's soul that was thirsty in verse 1, he's thirsty for one drop of water in a dry place, he knows will be overfilled with the very best. David knows that the satisfaction of what he needs will be met. Verse 6. When I remember thee upon my bed and meditate on thee in the night watches, David says, when I'm laying there at night, and here's something I will encourage all of you to do, because every now and then one of us or the other, or all of us sometime, will have a sleepless night. Might not be because something's troubling you per se. It might be because it is, but it might be just because you woke up. Me, I'll take a 3 or 4 hour nap from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock and wonder why I can't go to sleep. So why you can't get to sleep, I'm not issuing there. But you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep. David says, when I wake up in the middle of the night, during the night watches, I remember you. A good time to pray, a good time to meditate on God is in the night, when nothing else is going on and God wakes you up. Next time you wake up in the middle of the night and can't get to sleep, stop for a second and say, Lord, why am I awake? What do you want to tell me? Open your Bible, get on your knees and pray. Meditate on what you've heard or talked about. Make it a part of your life. He says, I'm going to ponder, I'm going to ruminate on these things. Okay? Verse 7. Because thou hast been my help, because that's true, therefore in the shadow of thy wings I will rejoice. And when he says this, he says, because you've been my help in the past, I will be satisfied. I will rest. I will take my comfort. I will take my consolation. My refuge will be in the shadow of your wings. And that's where I will rejoice. I will triumph. I will sing aloud. I'll cry out in victory because I'm in the shadow of your wings. In the shadow of the wings, you'll see the word kanaf. It means the extremity, the edge, the border, the utmost, the hem. And, oh man, let's look at this. The hem, or the skirt of the garment. How does that fit in? And we're not going to get into a big, long discussion about that. But in Ruth chapter 9 and 1 Samuel chapter 24, it talks about the skirt or the hem of the garment. And it's very important. What David is saying, back up here in verse 7, look what he says here, a little statement about David is saying, my defense, my security is in your authority. Because in the hem, the skirt, we think a skirt that's just dress. No, it's the hem. And the hem is where was embroidered the position, the rank of the person. He says, because you have in the hem of your garment the rank that you are. You are the God. That's where I'll find my security. in the hem of the garment. It's a poetic, social evaluation statement. Okay? Verse 8. My soul followeth hard after thee, thy right hand upholdeth me. And here we see, my soul followeth hard after thee. It's the same thing where God says, David's a man after my heart. He's trying to get to where I am. Nothing will deter him. He's clinging to, he's adhering to, he wants to be joined to me. Okay? And thy right hand, God, your right hand, keeps me fast. It follows me close. It sustains me. It takes care of me. Verse 9. On the other side of the coin, David says, though I'm seeking you, there are those that seek my soul because they want to destroy it. They shall go into the lower parts of the earth. Those who are trying to get me, they're the ones who are going to fail. And so we see the lowest parts here talks about, it's used in various places in the scripture, talks about the depths, the pit, and sometimes it's used figuratively. The same Hebrew word is used and translated womb. Okay? David says, when I was conceived and formed in the lower parts of the earth. He's talking about the womb. He doesn't think he came out of the dirt. It's not evolutionary or anything of that nature. But it's the same word. Okay? I came out of the depths, out of the pit. The furthest thing away from being born is the womb. Okay? By the way, here's something for you to study if you'd like. Go into the book of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, where the law is given. And read all the laws about when you're clean and when you're unclean. And see what they say. See what the thunder does that mean? What's it talking about? It's really interesting if you'll study it. Okay? I'll leave it there. Verse 10. They shall fall. Those guys who are against me, they're going to be destroyed. They're going to the lower parts. They shall fall by the sword. They shall be a portion for the foxes. Just like a fox goes down to the ground and eat, and foxes scavenge food. They'll be fox food. They're worthless. They'll be dead and buried. They're going to be gone. There's no hope for them. Verse 11. But the king, talking about himself, the king shall rejoice in God. Everyone that sweareth by him, God, shall glory. But the mouth of them that speak lies shall be stopped. And you see here the word glory and praise as the word halal. It was translated two different English words, okay? And rejoice up there, it's word in the Strong's Concordance, word 8055. Earlier, rejoice was a different rejoice. Okay, so you can do that word study. So David says, those who are speaking against me, those who are speaking lies, they shall be stopped. But those who follow God shall have glory. They'll make it. I got 3 or 4 sermons down the road here, and I can't preach them right now. But they're things we really need to know, and I want to keep going to it. So that ends the psalm. Okay? So what's David say? God is my God, and those who oppose my godly striving, I want to get to God, they shall fall. They shall be buried. They're out of the picture. But those who seek God, they'll rejoice. Because God is my God, not these others. Okay? All right, that's that. Now, I hope I've given you some food for thought, some things to study. And when you're reading the Psalms, pay attention to when it says the word God. Look it up and see what word is actually being used. When it says prophet, when it says Israel, when it says nation, see what words are being used. You'll see sometimes the same word is translated many different things in English. So you go back and get the original word, find out what the definition is, and see exactly what he's saying. Now, I've told you before, and I'll end with this. I'm not an only King James guy, but King James is what I use. But there are some other good translations that will help you understand what the original language was specifically saying. I always forget the initial. I think ESV, the English Standard Version, is pretty good. It's pretty good. So when in the original Hebrew it says L, it doesn't just have Lord with the capital L, Lord with all capitals. It actually specifies who it's talking about, that kind of a thing, and it's really helpful. okay? Those types of things will really help shorten or speed up your studies, because you don't have to go, what's this mean? It actually tells you. So the ESV is pretty decent. I like it. So I'll end with that. Any comment or question? Seeing none then, we will be dismissed with a word of prayer.